In the breathless final moments of our last episode, the signal, traced from beyond the moon, solidified. A tangible object. Entering Earth's atmosphere. No longer a theoretical enigma, but an imminent reality. The world held its breath, braced for impact. For a fiery demise. For a meteor's destructive kiss. But the celestial visitor had other plans. It defied expectations. It defied physics as we understood it. This was not a random collision. It was a descent. A controlled, deliberate arrival. The true nature of our visitor was about to be revealed. And the implications would ripple through every corner of human existence. Early atmospheric models predicted catastrophic fragmentation. A debris field stretching hundreds of kilometers. Instead, the object maintained its integrity. A singular mass, slowing with impossible precision. There was no fireball. No violent explosion of superheated rock and metal. Only a brilliant, silent deceleration. It carved a path through the upper atmosphere with an unnatural grace, leaving a phosphorescent trail in its wake. This was not the chaotic dance of uncontrolled orbital mechanics. This was purpose. This was intent. A chilling realization dawning on every observer. Its trajectory narrowed, pinpointing a specific destination. Not an ocean. Not a populated city. But a vast, desolate expanse. The Altai-Krai region. Deep within the Siberian wilderness. An area of extreme remoteness, known for its rugged mountains, pristine forests, and sparse human presence. A strategic choice? A coincidence? Or something far more intricate? The lack of collateral damage, the deliberate avoidance of humanity's sprawling networks, suggested a level of forethought that transcended mere chance. It landed where it would be found, but not immediately encountered. At 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated, global seismic arrays registered a distinct, low-frequency impact. Not an explosion. Not a tremor. A thud. A resonance. The ground absorbed the shock, a testament to the object's controlled deceleration. Satellite imagery, immediately tasked to the coordinates, revealed a newly formed scar on the pristine Siberian landscape. Not a crater of devastation, but a landing site. A defined perimeter. And within it, a structure. A machine. Clearly artificial. Clearly alien. The world's scientists, military strategists, and politicians processed this image with a collective gasp. Almost instantly, the world's major powers mobilized. Not for war, not yet. But for observation. For containment. For answers. Military assets, already on high alert since the initial signal detection, redirected with unparalleled speed. Reconnaissance flights. Satellite repositioning. Special operations units, trained for the unimaginable, were deployed. A silent, urgent scramble. The target, this enigmatic craft. The mission, secure the perimeter, assess the threat, and prevent any unauthorized access. Or escape. The first few hours were a blur of geopolitical ballet, performed on the precipice of the unknown. The earliest images were grainy, pixelated. Distant. Yet, undeniably clear in their implication. The object was massive. Dark. Monolithic. Its surface seemed to absorb light, an anti-structure against the snowy landscape. No visible seams. No obvious entry points. No discernible propulsion systems. It simply was. Standing silent. A monument to an unimaginable journey. The sense of scale was profound. Not a probe. Not a capsule. This was something engineered for deep space, for purpose, for perhaps a very long stay. A silent giant, now resting on our world. Within hours, a multi-layered cordon was established. First, an outer perimeter, hundreds of kilometers wide, sealing off air and ground traffic. Then, an inner zone, heavily fortified, patrolled by elite military units. No civilian access. No media penetration. The information blackout was immediate and absolute. This was a response born of both prudence and profound fear. Fear of what the object might contain. Fear of what it might represent. Fear of contamination. Or, perhaps, fear of what humanity might do if confronted directly with such an overwhelming truth. The world was about to learn of its new, silent neighbor. Despite the unprecedented containment effort, the truth could not be held. Whispers began almost immediately. Leaks. Unconfirmed reports. Then, the inevitable. A joint statement, issued by a hastily assembled international consortium of nations. Acknowledging. Confirming. An object of unknown origin has made a controlled landing on Earth. The language was carefully chosen. Devoid of inflammatory terms. But the subtext was clear. Humanity was no longer alone. The words hung heavy in the global consciousness, an earthquake of revelation. The official confirmation was just the beginning. The initial shock gave way to a surge of raw, untamed panic. Stock markets plunged. Currencies devalued. Supply chains fractured under the weight of irrational hoarding. Urban centers saw spontaneous gatherings, protests, and a pervasive, existential dread. Some sought spiritual solace, others armed themselves. Governments struggled to maintain order, issuing pleas for calm that often fell on deaf ears. The alien arrival had not just landed on Siberian soil, it had landed squarely in the heart of humanity's fragile equilibrium. A deep-seated fear had been awakened, one that knew no borders. As humanity wrestled with its tumultuous internal response, the object itself remained silent. Immobile. Watching? Waiting? Or simply inert? The questions mounted. Was it sentient? Was it piloted? Or was it merely a machine, an emissary from a distant, unknowable civilization? Every military and scientific mind on Earth turned its focus to this silent giant. The world watched. And waited. For a sign. A signal. Any indication of purpose or intent. But the craft offered only its stark, impassive presence, a riddle etched into the Siberian snow. The true nature of this visit was yet to unfold. For decades, theoretical protocols for first contact had been debated, refined, and archived. Now, they were unleashed. A cascade of complex decision matrices. Communication attempts began. A spectrum of frequencies. Mathematical primes. Pictograms. Every conceivable universal language was broadcast towards the silent craft. But it remained unresponsive. A barrier of indifference. Or incomprehension. The failure to elicit any response fueled anxieties. Were our methods too primitive? Was their technology beyond our grasp? Or were they simply not interested in our greetings? Attempts to approach the craft met an invisible, impenetrable barrier. Drones, then armored vehicles, were stopped dead in their tracks, sometimes kilometers away. An energy field? A localized gravitational anomaly? No known force could replicate its effects. Matter itself seemed to warp around its periphery, repelling any intrusion. This wasn't just advanced technology, it was fundamentally different. A profound declaration of its untouchable nature. The craft dictated the terms of engagement. It kept us at bay. And the questions deepened. What kind of power could create such a shield? Precise measurements eventually filtered through the secure channels. The craft was immense. Over 2 kilometers in length. Its mass, estimated through localized gravitational shifts, was staggering. It wasn't just large, it was an artificial world unto itself. This scale challenged every terrestrial engineering principle. How could such a structure be built? How could it travel such distances? And what civilization possessed the resources, the knowledge, the sheer ambition to construct such a behemoth? The true measure of our visitors was beginning to dawn, and it was humbling. Terrifying. The world outside the cordon continued its descent into instability. National economies, already reeling, began to seize. Social cohesion frayed. Conspiracy theories flourished, filling the information vacuum with alarming speed. Was this an invasion? A probe? A test? Governments, once unified in their initial response, began to fracture under the strain. Old rivalries resurfaced. Mistrust festered. The arrival of the alien object had become a catalyst, accelerating humanity's internal conflicts, exposing our deep-seated vulnerabilities. We were confronted not just by the alien, but by ourselves. Days turned into weeks. The craft remained an inscrutable enigma. The barrier unwavering. The silence absolute. Humanity collectively held its breath, suspended in a purgatory of anticipation. Every satellite, every sensor, every human eye fixed on that dark monolith in the snow. What was its purpose? Why did it land here, now? The lack of answers was more terrifying than any overt threat. It allowed the mind to conjure its darkest fears. The waiting game became a psychological crucible, testing the limits of human patience, sanity, and hope. The prolonged silence from the craft, coupled with the global uncertainty, began to take a severe psychological toll. Reports of mass delusion, widespread anxiety disorders, and increasing rates of despair permeated society. Sleep patterns disrupted. Dreams haunted by the image of the silent monolith. This was not a physical war, but a war of nerves, a psychological assault by sheer absence. The unknown, the unfathomable, began to chip away at the very foundations of human mental resilience. We were utterly unprepared for this kind of encounter. For this profound, unsettling stillness. The object, despite its stillness, exerted a profound presence. It was more than a physical structure, it was a symbol. A constant, stark reminder of our cosmic insignificance. Of our sudden, terrifying vulnerability. The world collectively felt its gaze, even though it had no discernible eyes. It was a silent observer, a judge, perhaps, of our chaotic species. Its sheer existence redefined everything. Our place in the universe. Our scientific understanding. Our philosophical constructs. The Altai Cry was no longer just a remote region, it was the crucible of humanity's future, under the shadow of the unknown. Weeks of intensive observation yielded little new data about the craft itself. Thermal scans indicated a stable internal temperature, independent of ambient conditions. Spectroscopic analysis revealed exotic material compositions, unlike anything found naturally on Earth. It was clearly not of our making. No exhaust. No waste products. An almost perfect closed system. The energy source remained a complete mystery. The craft defied all conventional understanding of engineering, physics, and even basic biological needs. It simply existed, pristine and baffling, amidst our frantic probing. Then, after 27 days of utter silence, a flicker. Not a movement. Not a sound. A subtle energy signature. Detected deep within the craft's interior. A faint, rhythmic pulse. Barely discernible against the background noise. It was not a broadcast. Not a beacon. It was activity. Internal. Deliberate. The world's top physicists and engineers huddled over the data, their fatigue momentarily forgotten. A new phase had begun. The craft was not inert. It was merely dormant. And now, something within it was stirring. The waiting was about to reach its terrifying climax. The pulse grew stronger. More complex. It wasn't a simple rhythm, but a structured sequence. A data stream, perhaps. But how was it being generated? And for what purpose? The energy required seemed immense, yet there was no external power signature, no exhaust. It was self-sustaining. Or drawing upon an unknown source. The barrier around the craft remained firm, preventing any close-range analysis of this internal activation. We could only observe from a distance, measuring the growing strength of this unseen heart. The craft was alive. In some profound, terrifying way. Then, it happened. Not a burst. Not an explosion. A gradual emanation. A new signal. Emerging directly from the craft, bypassing its impenetrable barrier. It wasn't radio. It wasn't light. It was a modulated field. Penetrating everything. Rock, air, flesh. A direct neural interface? A resonance with the very fabric of spacetime? Whatever its nature, it was unlike any transmission ever detected. And it carried information. An immense torrent of data, flowing outward from the silent giant. The message had begun. But would humanity be able to comprehend it? The signal was instantly captured, recorded, and routed to every supercomputing facility on Earth. Teams of linguists, mathematicians, cryptographers, and theoretical physicists plunged into the digital torrent. Initial analysis confirmed it was not a natural phenomenon. It was structured. Intelligent. But completely alien. No discernible language families. No obvious mathematical constants. It was a data stream unlike any other. A puzzle of unimaginable complexity. The race was on. To understand what this enigmatic visitor was trying to say. Before it was too late. The breakthrough came from an unexpected quarter. Not through linguistics, but through pure, abstract mathematics. The signal was not a language in our sense, but a meta-language. A set of self-referential algorithms. A computational architecture that described itself. It was the language of its own creation. A blueprint. Not of words, but of fundamental principles. It was elegant. Terrifyingly so. As if speaking directly from the mind of an architect, not a poet. It bypassed our cultural filters, our preconceived notions of communication. It spoke in pure logic. The first complete decryption was a moment of profound, chilling clarity. It was not a greeting. Not a message of peace. Not even a declaration of intent in any diplomatic sense. It contained no hello. No "we come in peace." It was a data packet. A warning? An instruction? Or perhaps something else entirely? The information was raw, unvarnished, stripped of any emotion or empathy. It simply presented facts. And those facts, once understood, began to cast a long, cold shadow over humanity's fragile sense of security. The true horror was not the alien, but its indifference. The initial data stream was not linear. It was fragmented. Like shards of a broken mirror, reflecting disparate, disturbing images. Geometric patterns that defied human comprehension. Brief, silent videos of impossible physics. Biological schematics of organisms unlike anything found in the known universe. Each piece, a jolt. Each revelation, a deeper plunge into the abyss of the unknown. It wasn't a narrative. It was an inventory. A catalog. But a catalog of what? And why were these specific pieces of information being broadcast? The meaning remained elusive, terrifying. As more fragments were pieced together, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The mathematical patterns revealed complex energy equations. The biological schematics depicted lifeforms adapted to extreme environments. The videos showed processes of immense scale and power, clearly not natural. This was knowledge. Advanced knowledge. But it felt less like a gift, and more like a display. A demonstration. A flexing of cosmic muscle. The dread began to deepen. This wasn't a hello. It was a subtle, yet unmistakable, assertion of superiority. Of power beyond human imagining. Debate raged. Was this a warning? A prelude to something more direct? Or a lesson, delivered without context, without empathy? A glimpse into a universe far more vast and indifferent than we could ever comprehend. Some theorized it was a prime directive, a standardized informational broadcast for any emerging civilization. Others whispered of a threat assessment. Data to gauge our capabilities, our understanding. But the chilling consensus was this: the message was not for our comfort. It was a cold, hard truth, delivered with the precision of a cosmic surgeon. Then, a deeper pattern emerged within the fragments. Not just disparate data, but a cyclical structure. A repeating sequence of information, each cycle slightly modified. It was a narrative, but one utterly alien to human storytelling. It depicted processes, transformations, erasures. The rise and fall of celestial bodies, of entire ecosystems, of civilizations, all governed by these same fundamental, brutal principles. No emotion. No regret. Just cause and effect, on a scale that dwarfed human history. A terrifying chronicle of universal change. The most disturbing elements were the erasures. Visualizations, devoid of direct violence, showing the elegant, inevitable cessation of complex systems. The fading of stars. The desiccation of planets. The silent dissolution of biological entities. It was presented as a natural, almost beautiful process. But the implications were devastating. This was not a warning of a specific threat, it was a fundamental law of their universe. Annihilation, depicted with serene detachment. It was a mirror, perhaps, reflecting the ultimate fate of all things. Including, implicitly, us. This was the ultimate horror. Not malice. Not aggression. Pure, unadulterated indifference. The message was not directed at humanity, but simply through it. We were incidental. An emergent phenomenon in a universe governed by these vast, impersonal forces. Their arrival was not a hostile act, perhaps, but merely the continuation of a journey, a data dump, a casual observation. The crushing weight of this cosmic apathy began to settle. We were not important enough to be threatened. Not important enough to be greeted. Just there. Another variable in a complex equation. The consortium of scientists and strategists who pieced together this chilling message bore a profound burden. How do you tell a panicked world that the alien visitor is not interested in conquest, but in observation, and perhaps, in our eventual, inevitable disappearance? The information, once understood, stripped away any remaining illusions of human centrality. It left a void. A gaping, philosophical wound. The dread was no longer abstract. It was specific. It was cold. And it permeated every level of human understanding. The message was a truth. And the truth was terrifying. The leaks of the message's true nature, inevitably, began. The initial panic, once fueled by fear of war, transformed into something far more insidious, existential despair. Riots gave way to resignation. Hope, already fragile, began to crumble. What was the point? If we were merely footnotes in a cosmic ledger, destined for eventual erasure, what did any of it matter? The very fabric of human ambition, belief, and purpose started to unravel. The alien craft, still silent in the snow, had delivered not a weapon, but a poison. A poison of truth. We had imagined aliens as conquerors or saviors. as mirror images of our own desires and fears. We had projected onto them our own humanity. But this was truly alien. Uncaring. Utterly foreign to our emotional spectrum. It challenged our fundamental understanding of intelligence, of life, of purpose. It was a civilization so advanced, so distant, that its existence was an abstract equation. Not a story. Not a dialogue. And in that terrifying abstraction, humanity found itself truly alone. Despite the presence of something undeniably other. The craft continued its steady broadcast, an endless loop of these chilling truths. Humanity was left with one overwhelming, agonizing question: why? Why deliver this message? If we are so insignificant, so inconsequential, why bother? Is it a record? A log? An automatic broadcast triggered by proximity? Or is there a deeper, more profound purpose behind this cold, dispassionate revelation? What could motivate such an act of cosmic indifference? The answers, if they exist, remain locked within the silent monolith, and the horrifying data it continues to impart. The implications were clear. The message wasn't about what they would do to us, but about what the universe is. About what will happen. In the end, it was a glimpse not of our conquerors, but of our own ultimate fate. Of the inherent impermanence of all things. And the terrible, beautiful elegance of cosmic destruction. The world had braced for battle. It had braced for invasion. It had braced for enlightenment. Instead, it received a eulogy. A prophecy. A cold, unfeeling whisper from the void. A reminder of cycles far beyond our control. So, the craft rests. A dark, imposing statement in the Siberian snow. Its message, a constant, undeniable truth. And humanity? We have been forced to confront not just an alien presence, but an alien worldview. One that places us in a vast, cold cosmos, where our existence is transient, our struggles fleeting. The game has changed. The stakes are no longer about survival, but about meaning. In the face of such profound indifference, can humanity forge a new purpose? Or will the shadow of this cosmic truth be too great to bear? The long game has just begun. The message continues to broadcast, an endless stream of indifferent truth. And as we absorb its implications, we are left to wonder. Is this all? Is this the extent of their interaction? Or is this merely the first stage of a far grander, more terrifying plan? Is the craft simply a messenger? A data buoy? Or is it something more? Something waiting? Humanity, forever changed, stands at the precipice. The first contact has occurred. The first message received. And it was not a greeting. What happens when the next cycle begins? When the broadcast finally ends, and the true purpose of the craft is revealed?